What sells a short-term rental before the price, the reviews, or even the location? Here's a hint. It's literally the first thing that your guest sees.
Having that image on your photos and online not only represents the property better, but it represents you better. It represents your company better. It says, okay, they took the time.
You might think that your iPhone can do the job, but what if it's secretly causing you thousands of dollars of missed bookings?
So I go in and I kind of use two different lenses. So I have my real estate lens, which is a wider angle, and then I have my more zoomed in.
Meet photographer Kaylee DeCollibus, the woman behind the lens. She's our secret weapon and behind Provincetown's most successful Airbnb listings.
It makes people want to be there, and it helps you really see what it would feel like to be there if you can't be there.
I'm Jason Muth, 33-time Airbnb superhost. After 25 years in the media business, I started my chapter 2 in the world of short-term rentals. Since then, I've hosted over 6,800 guests and their dogs at our properties, and we're managing over $30 million worth of vacation rentals between the 5 that we own and the 22 on behalf of our clients. This show is all about helping you create a smart stay. Profitable, personal, and built to last. It's real world hosting done smart. Let's go. So Rory, we're talking to our photographer. This is a big deal because, and I'll introduce her in a second. I don't know how many times I've asked her to be on the show, and finally we got her. But Rory, you know a lot about photography, being a real estate broker, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I was working as a real estate broker, the value of photos is, I can't say anything more about that. I mean, the single most important thing you can do in a real estate listing is have good photos, and have good photos from the very beginning so that you can have as many eyes get interested in your property as possible. And the type of photography is a little bit different with short-term rentals, and we'll get into all of the differences there, but it's incredibly important for a real estate listing, and it's the most important thing you can do for your short-term rental listing is to have good photos, because no matter what guest experience you provide to people after the fact, no matter what amenities you have, if you don't get people interested in your property in the first place, you're not going to have renters, you're not going to have income, and you're not going to have the reviews. So the single most important thing you can do is have the good photos.
I should say I work with 2 photographers. I work with my friend Mark Goodwin for our properties in New Hampshire, and then we work with Kaylee DeCollibus for everything in Provincetown. So Kaylee, welcome to SmartStay show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
And I wanted to say that because just in case Mark's listening, like Mark, you're our photographer too, right? You know, I hired Mark a long time ago at a job that we had, and then we all went different ways, and he's working full time for another company. So it's kind of hard to have that availability, although he does go to P-Town a lot. He's done some lifestyle shots for us there, but Kaylee has shot every single property that we have in Provincetown as part of Pride Away Stays at this point. And I can't thank you enough for really helping those properties come to life. And set each one on the pathway that we knew that it should be set. And I'll explain how we found you in a second. But again, thanks for being on the show. So you are a photographer, right? Like, and you studied this, or how did this all happen in your life?
Well, it's kind of like a super fun story. Basically, from a young age, middle school, high school, college was never really my future plans. It was a plan as in I felt like I needed to do it, but I knew that it wasn't like going to be what I wanted to do. So I got to senior year and I had guidance counselors telling me, this is what you should be doing, applying, go and figure it out. I had art schools lined up. I was applying to, Bridgewater State. I got in. And I got the acceptance letter and I cried because I didn't want to do that. I was like, this is not in my soul. And my parents were completely supportive of knowing that that wasn't my path. And so I basically just graduated, and photography was always an interest. I always knew that that was going to be the best place for me to start something. I just had no idea how or where. So I started working with Life Touch doing school portraits. I would pack up my car with a ton of stuff and drive 2 hours to a school at 4 in the morning and set up and, meet the janitor at the door and set up in the auditorium and work with kids till 2 o'clock and then come home. And it was a hard job, and it taught me a lot about the kind of insides and outsides of photography that I didn't know that somebody would probably go to school for. Like the technical stuff I wasn't really familiar with, but I did know how to pick up a camera and compose an image. So I remember I would sit down and I would go on YouTube, and I was like so adamant on teaching myself, how to light a photo, what the settings mean, what settings I should be using, and all that stuff. And so I fully self-taught with that stuff. And then around 2019, I had a family friend who was some of my best friend's mom. She was doing real estate photography, kind of part-time. She's a very creative person. And she was like, Kaylee, you should get into this. Like, this would be a really cool path for you. And I was like, oh, maybe. Like, I could possibly do that, but I don't really see it being anything. And then I remember sitting with my family. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. Like, I'm just going to see what happens. So I got myself a camera and I got myself a lens, and that was it. I got like a monopod. It wasn't even a full tripod yet. Yep. And I drove out to her shoots with her, and I shadowed her. I followed behind her. She'd have me take an angle, and I would stand in the corner. She'd say, okay, how would you line up this shot? And I would try it. And she'd be like, so I would do it a little differently. And I was like, okay, taking mental notes. And I would see, how she was charging and how long it would take her, and how you remember, like when you walk into a house, where do you start? How do you not forget rooms? The toilet seat is up. That light was off in that room, and all that stuff was kind of just, I had to learn with experience and time. But basically I started with that, decided I loved it, and how different it is from photographing people, because people can be very complicated with, posing, and nobody really loves how they look in a picture. And that can be very difficult with, oh, can you edit this? And can you fix that? And can you make it not look like it's me anymore? And, it's stressful.
And you can do all that very easily with, lots of different tools that are out there.
Right.
I look at like, shots that we take of our daughter, and she likes to look at it instantly and then pick the one that she likes, which is just wild. So with the real estate photography though, and you kind of worked your way into how you found your way into this space, why should people that are launching properties on Airbnb or Vrbo, why do they need you? Like, what is that? Like, I'm recording this right now on an iPhone 17 or whatever it is.
Right.
Looks pretty good. I'm pretty good with it, But what's the pitch as to why you need an actual photographer for your property?
Well, the thing is I could walk into a property and probably photograph it with my iPhone fully and completely, but also so could you. But, and I'm not discrediting your photography skills whatsoever. But I'm saying if we both walked in and took the same shots with no guidance, I can probably guarantee the professional shots, even just on my phone, would be composed in a certain way that would be more flattering for the property versus just kind of an amateur photographer or somebody with no photography knowledge kind of walking in. And, you go on Zillow and you see, when it's a shot with an iPhone or just any phone. And it's usually kind of, the big thing is like the vertical lines need to be straight. That's kind of, it's just, there's lots of little details in photos that signify this was done by a professional. And I think that having that image on your photos and online not only represents the property better, but it represents you better. It represents your company better. It says, okay, they took the time to bring in a professional to highlight their property, whether it be real estate, Airbnb, whatever it is. It gives it kind of that elevated look and kind of just makes people want to be there. And it helps you really see what it would feel like to be there if you can't be there, when you see it online and stuff like that.
Now, go ahead, Rory.
I was going to say, so I've seen the difference. If you go into Zillow, you can clearly see the difference. I mean, I believe between a professional and an amateur, even using good equipment and taking decent photos, it's just not the same. And it speaks to, it makes the property come to life in a way. But we're here talking about short-term rentals. How is it different photographing a short-term rental property than a real estate listing?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And it is extremely different. I can go into a real estate listing and take 20 minutes and be in and out and just generic 3 to 4 shots per room, nothing exciting. Usually the houses also aren't, dressed up as much as a rental property, but when I walk into a rental property, I just immediately see the vision because usually they're perfectly staged and that they look amazing and they're kind of set up to be an experience for people, because it's short term. So you want it to be exciting, not only just the area, but what it looks like inside is part of its personality. So going into a rental property to photograph is super different because I take longer. I pay way more attention to the details. Like if you have a nice looking coffee maker on the counter, that's not going to matter for real estate. But for a rental property, people are looking to see, oh, I can make coffee in the kitchen, or oh, there's towels on the bed, or like, little details like that. So I'll go in and take double the amount of photos I would normally take for a real estate listing, and I'll take double the amount of time working on them afterwards too, because I want them to truly represent the property felt pretty inside when I was there, and I want the pictures to fully represent that.
I remember the first time we had a professional photographer come out to one of our short-term rental properties. I used the same service that I used for listing photos, and they're good, right? The photos came out nice and simple, but it was like you were saying, it didn't really speak to the experience. It showed somebody what it'd be like to own this house instead of what it would be like to stay in this house. And some of the instincts were very different. I mean, the most obvious things were he took photos of the hot water heater, and things that would be important to somebody purchasing the property, but certainly not important to somebody coming to stay there. And it was a bit of a
Right.
revelation. And at that time when we first had the photographer come out, having a professional of any sort was above and beyond what the market expected. We were competing against iPhone 4 photos at the time that people took, where you could see the owner in the mirror. But I mean, we had one of our competing properties. You just saw somebody holding a broom in the corner. So but the market's gotten a lot more competitive in the short-term rental space, where now having professional photos isn't just a bonus; it's a kind of a requirement. But going above and beyond that, there's a bit of revelation to realize that these photos, sure, they were showing the property positively, but they weren't communicating anything about what it would be like to stay there. And that's where I think we really set ourselves ahead of the pack for a while, by getting a lifestyle photographer. Can you just, you alluded to the coffee pot a little bit there, but can you just give us a couple examples of great shots that work well for a short-term rental property that you may never use for a real estate listing?
Basically anything. So I go in and I kind of use two different lenses. So I have my real estate lens, which is a wider angle, and then I have my more zoomed in lens, which is a 24 millimeter. And when I switch over to that lens, everything I take with that lens is nothing I would ever use for real estate. So I'm shooting horizontal, but I'm also shooting vertical shots, which I think are a huge deal, because what I like to tell people that have Airbnbs is, are you going to be making your Airbnb an Instagram account or a social media account? Because a lot of these pictures that I'm going to take that are mostly vertical are going to look really good on social media. And you should be giving your Airbnb a name, and you should be, making it this whole big experience. But things that I would go in and, photograph that wouldn't be what I would do for real estate is basically just a lot of zoomed in shots. Detail shots is what I call them, pretty much. And it's just little moments of the couch looking nice with the pillows fluffed, or books on the coffee table that say Cape Cod or P-Town, or especially with P-Town too, is a lot of the really cool artwork on the walls, and like just little tiny snippets of P-Town, that somebody bought from there, from that location, that creates the experience of, I'm in P-Town, I'm on Commercial Street, I'm here, I'm doing it. Like just all those little pieces of like you go there because you want that experience, and that's what I'm going in to shoot, is all of those moments.
Yeah, and when we put the listing together after you're done, we're always looking for the combination of wider shots and close-up shots, and we're trying to kind of put the order together. Granted, we could have Airbnb just put together its recommended AI order, but we do curate that a little bit more afterward. Try to wrestle between having a walk through the property through each of them versus also, mixing up a wider and a close up shot. Cause I think the detail shots are extremely important. One thing they say in our world is the first 5 shots are, basically everything with your listing. Like you have to put the top shots in your listing. They have to look fantastic together. And they have to really highlight the top amenities of the property because otherwise people are going to keep scrolling. So, let's talk a little bit about like when you're doing shots and the weather might not be perfect. I've had some owners push back when the weather's not good. I know that there was a day that we canceled when there was a monsoon that you didn't want to drive in, which I didn't blame you. But what are the best conditions? Like, is it, super sunny, blue skies? Is it overcast? Is it okay if it's raining? Like, what do you recommend?
So it honestly varies by property and the type of sunny day or overcast day that it can be. So I wouldn't recommend a monsoon day like that day just because there's like showery days where it's kind of gray outside, and then there's monsoon days where it's basically dark outside. And those they not only make the properties look dark, but they kind of force me to have the lights on, and it gives kind of a yellow cast to the inside of the house depending on the lights. But it also makes outside like stand out a lot too, and makes everything super green, and can sometimes add a cast of green too. But what I do like to tell people also is I can pretty much shoot in any weather. I will make the property look good if you have ocean views directly outside the window or outside of, a balcony or a slider door. I would recommend picking a beautiful day just because a gray day is going to make the ocean look gray. So that's not going to capture that. But as for if there isn't a glorious view or something like that, I always like to say overcast days can be the best, like a nice, bright, just cloudy day. Because it kind of acts as a natural diffuser for the sun. So there aren't super harsh highlights and super, super harsh shadows anywhere. So it actually kind of creates like a nice even tone throughout the whole house and really captures the natural colors and everything inside, which sometimes some people wouldn't think would matter too much. But in terms of just being creative and, showing the property how it should be shown, that can be best. But I do love a sunny day, so can't complain there.
You've also shifted your opinions about interior lighting since
Yes.
you and I worked together. I know that Rory used to teach me to turn on every single light and open every single shade. And we used to do that. I'd get the properties ready for that. Then you're like, can I shut this or can I turn this off? And, so what changed? Like, why are you looking for more natural light versus, light bulbs?
I like how it looks online, portfolio wise, Instagram wise, posting it wise. I think that having lights off and with a certain editing style, it can look just really natural, like how you would walk in and see the place with your own eyes for the first time. And to me, sometimes lights on can feel a little real estatey in certain properties. There are some properties that I would say, let's do the lights on because the lights are beautiful and they enhance the whole room. They make it look alive. And then there's just some properties that it's like the sun is hitting perfectly right here, and I want to keep the lights off, and I want to capture those shadows, and I want to capture those highlights, and because you can really feel like if I was sitting in this room, the sun is just shining straight through that window, and I want that to come through the photo and feel that.
Or remember we talked to Coleman Davis a couple episodes ago. Coleman has casitas, ghost town casitas, I think is what he calls it, down in Texas. Like, Kaylee, you would love these places. He's an art director. I don't want to say former, because a lot of us, we all have past lives, but I still want to call us what we are. He's an art director, worked in New York, like in, ad agencies, and he's designing his properties based on like where the sun is rising and setting. And he's kind of positioning the actual physical structure. Like he kind of has in his head the pictures before he actually does the property himself, which is a fascinating way to kind of think about it. And I know that you're not, Kaylee, coming into a property that you're about to build, right? You're coming in to photo it, But,
Right.
my hunch is you probably have a very similar way about, seeing the property that maybe the owner isn't even seeing it that way.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I do have, I mean, there's apps out there where a lot of photographers, I don't use it as much, but you can see where the sun is going to be at a certain time of day and plan the shoot around that, because some houses are facing a certain direction and it looks better at 12 o'clock than it does at 11. Literally just makes the tiniest difference. So really just depends.
So, like, what about golden hour? Everyone talks about that, and is that when we should be shooting, or most of what we do is like midday?
Right. I wouldn't call it golden hour as much as I would call it, you would want twilights, which, because golden hour, it would be beautiful. Trust me. Like, no, I love golden hour, but you would want to wait a half an hour to an hour after that for when the sun kind of disappears, but you still have a really pretty sky color. And then you get those like twilight hours and the lights inside are on so that they look really nice outside, which is something I normally would do just virtually because, it's tricky to get out to a property at 8 o'clock, especially in the summer, to catch it at that. You have like 10 minutes. I've done it once and the pictures were incredible. It was so fun. But it is very much, you have 15 minutes to get 20 of the best shots you've ever taken and then the sun is gone. So
What's your position on some of the kind of the virtual touch-ups after the fact? So we talked about kind of adding golden hour, but there, I've seen photos, and certainly in the real estate context, ranging from virtual staging to, complete, redos. Like, in your opinion, what's the right way to use some of these technologies, and what's the wrong way?
my big thing is do it as long as you're not misrepresenting the property. I've had clients ask me, can you edit out the cracks in the driveway? And can you edit out the power lines? And I'm like, I mean, I can, but I need you to know that you're completely misrepresenting your property and people are going to be upset when they show up and they see the cracks and they see the power lines are blocking the front of the house, So I do draw the line there, but I do love to do the virtual staging and certain virtual things as long as, because usually my clients will also include the version without the fake furniture in it, just because it helps kind of show this is what it could look like. This isn't what it does look like, but it could. And, there's different versions. Some people do it and it doesn't look as realistic. Some people have better ways of doing it and it looks more realistic. So kind of really just depends on who you are and how you're doing it. And I think it's great because it really just helps you see the property in lots of different ways. I spend a lot of time editing out cords or, changing the screen on a TV, just little things like that you wouldn't ever notice. I have interior design clients and we edit out all of the outlets and the light switches in the house because they're not selling the house. They're just showing how they designed it. So lots of different ways you can kind of approach it.
Yeah, totally agree. We don't want to misrepresent the property by editing things out that are fundamentally part of it. It is one thing to have different angles. I definitely have, kind of angled photos at some places that maybe don't show the neighbor's house, despite the fact the neighbor is right there. It's not misrepresenting, you're just taking a bit of a different angle. We do TV screens for all of our TV screens. I'd rather have a picture on it. Usually we do a Roku screen, and our production team, Dan, he does a lot of that afterward. I know you do virtual staging and virtual production. Dan does some of that with our shots as well. But, we're always putting Roku screens or the Netflix logo or something on a TV screen just to make it look like it's not a big gray box in the middle of the photo. Editing out chords, and that's a great tip. You're great at editing things out that, I remember we've been in some shots before where you're like, I'll just take that out afterwards so we don't have to clean it up. And then you just edit out the liquor bottles or the stuff that's on the floor. And, post-production tips or tools allow us to do that relatively easily. So, one difference though with virtual staging, with real estate photography, if you're going to sell a property, if you're listening to this and you have a short-term rental, do not virtually stage the room, because when the guests get there, the furniture that they see should be the furniture that was in the photo, not just this stuff that could have been there. So that's another difference between like how real estate photography would work versus short-term rental photography. But I've had it happen before where, furniture has not been delivered yet to a deck or a patio, but we'll still shoot the patio and then maybe edit those things in afterward from product images. Or, I tell people like, it's okay to have some iPhone photos in your listing, right? Don't just rely on them. We need the professional photography. It's a requirement for all of our listings. But, we always supplement things with photos that they might have on their camera roll, or a photo that you have to take quickly after the fact, or even seasonal photos, because we're doing our shoot with you, and then that might happen in March. It might happen in August. You don't know what month it's going to happen in. Everything might not be in bloom. And if it's not in bloom, we could wait 3 months until it's in bloom and not have 3 months of bookings, or we can get the listing live and supplement it with, other photos afterwards. So, there's all like tips and ways to do this, so your listing is perfect, but it's always, the core is the professional photos. Like, it's always kind of there. So as we start to wrap up, I do want to ask, what goes into being a good client? Because if you're listening to this and you want to hire a photographer to film your short-term rental property, what should people do in preparation, like both beforehand when they book your services, leading up to showing up when you're there, and then on site? Like, what do you look for when you get there to be a good client? What do you look for and you're like, oh, it's one of those shoots?
Yeah, so I have a checklist actually on my website, I think on my booking page. I've had some clients literally print it out and have it stapled together in their hands when I got there.
I've done
Love that. Like, I love that because that really means that they saw it. They took the time, they did the things, they made it look great, and they did it. It's always, it just makes it easier for me. It's not necessarily that, you're a terrible person if you didn't raise the blinds or turn all the lights on, but it just makes the whole process easier. It, creates less work and gives me more time to be more creative versus having to go around the whole house and, fold blankets, turn all the lights on and stuff like that. But basically, some of the main things that I look for, and this is both real estate and Airbnb, and I find Airbnb and short-term rentals are a little bit better at stuff like this than real estate. And I also think real estate can just be a bit of a more stressful, rushed process. It can be kind of emotional for certain situations. So there's a lot going on. So I totally understand all that stuff. But not having your cars parked in the driveway, park them somewhere away from the house just gives a better, faster process. Having the shades up, lights on, toilet seats down, beds made, the simple things that just, you kind of want it to look like you don't live there, but some circumstances that's not possible. So, I totally understand, but I would say don't, be like polishing your floors when I arrive. That's happened before and I've almost fallen from it and it can be scary. I have people scrubbing their windows when I'm arriving and I'm like, don't worry, that stuff won't show up. But, if it makes you feel better, then go for it. But I always like to say, if it does show up, I can fix it later, but I can almost guarantee you that it won't. And the last part would probably be just to, hang out somewhere else respectfully. I have clients that do like to follow me around and chat a little bit. And I'm like, all right, I'm getting you in all the pictures or, you're showing in that mirror, but, they don't see what I see mentally or just actually on the camera. So, I can walk into a room and know exactly what areas of the whole house are going to be visible. And they don't realize that being in the hallway 3 rooms down is also visible to me. So just, I love when a client leaves me alone and like gets coffee or something. So stuff like that just makes it easier for me to, I'll put music on my phone and I just kind of lock in and I, get a ton of really nice pictures.
Do you know what I usually do when you're shooting?
The doors, the keypads.
Usually I'm installing locks. Like when,
yes.
when Kaylee is filming, and it's just so I could feel like I'm doing something like on site. Not that we don't do anything. I mean, certainly we do a lot with Pride Away Stays, but and I am not a locksmith, but I actually have gotten a lot of these locks on the doors successfully. I have made multiple phone calls to Rory in many situations where I can't figure it out, and I've had some handymen, like complete the task afterward. But I think my hit rate's about 75% on getting these locks on the door. While Kaylee is there, filming the property. So,
and you're always out of the way, so.
Well, you
10
tell
out
me
of
where
10.
to go. Also, you're just like, all right, you're in the shot. I'm like, I'm going. Hey, Rory, any final thoughts for Kaylee?
I have no thoughts. I just, it's actually interesting hearing what it's like coming from your perspective there, because in your march through it. So, I mean, you've worked at Life Touch, you've worked in more traditional real estate, and you're working with the short-term rentals. I kind of think there's a progression there of creativity. So I hope, for you that the short-term rental aspect of your business allows for, a little bit more creativity, a little bit more, variety in what you're doing, and just an opportunity to really showcase your portfolio.
Yeah, exactly. Real estate gets very cookie cutter, very much. I could walk in and do it blindfolded at this point because it's very structured, but I have so much fun with the short-term rentals, with the interior design stuff, and that's where I get super excited and I start just taking tons of pictures, and that's my favorite. I love the detail shots, I love the views, I love getting to even just be in P-Town, stuff like that. It's my favorite.
Rory, I always know when Kaylee's going to like the property. Like I'll text her to be like, you're going to like this one. Like it's your style. And then she'll show up and she'll be like, oh my God, look at these patterns. This is great. I love this. Yeah. And, and we've done a lot of great properties in town. I mean, and even the ones that aren't the style that I think Kaylee would like, her eyes are going to pop open. She still makes it like really come to life. And, we've had a really great, couple of years of these properties when all the bookings that we've gotten. So, I think the end result is that the properties stand out more. The Airbnb and Vrbo algorithms like these properties. We get great guests. They have good experiences because of what we provide at Pride Away Stays. They give great reviews, and then it becomes kind of a cycle that continues to fill itself. And it always starts with having really good photos. We talk to potential clients all the time. And a lot of times I'll ask them, all the time I ask them, like, do you have a current listing? I'll take a look at the listing and it will look like exactly why we're taking it over, right? Like it will look like they didn't put any effort into the photos. All the shots are they're dark, they're from an iPhone, and they're from the vantage point of you standing up. Every single one of the shots, and if that's what your listing looks like, please go hire a professional photographer. If you happen to be near the South Shore of Boston, Cape Cod, Rhode Island, Southern Mass, Kaylee's available. So we will link up, or New Hampshire. You're going up to a wedding in New Hampshire. So yeah, we'll.
Right. Yeah. Connecticut. I mean.
There we go. All right. She's going all over New England. And once she gets big enough, then she's going to hire people out and we're going to end up with her team instead of her. But until then, she's part of our secret sauce. So we will link up your website in the show notes and your Instagram account, which by the way, is how I found Kaylee. I literally slid into her DMs, as an old person would say. And I was like, I love what you did with this property. I need you to shoot some of the properties for us. And she's like, who's this weird, creepy guy that's asking for this? But let's go see. And then sure enough, here we are, almost 25 properties deep. So thank you for all the work you've done with us with Pride Away Stays. It's really helped our business. And we hope that it's contributed to your portfolio and led to some other stuff for you.
Thank you for all the beautiful properties that I get to photograph and for my continued trips to P-Town, because it gives me the best excuse to come out there, and I love it.
Yeah. Awesome. And thank you for listening to SmartStay Show. Rory, we will link up str.legal in the show notes as well. If people have legal questions about anything going on in real estate world, Massachusetts and New Hampshire, you certainly can help in your 2 licensed states. And you can refer out to other states as well. If you've enjoyed the episode, we love 5-star reviews and we love all your comments. You can go to smartstayshow.com and fill out the form if you want to be a guest on the show and talk about awesome stuff like we just talked about with Kaylee. So on behalf of both of you, Rory and Kaylee, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.